1. Introduction. RAWSEP View. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable. Wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the eco-design wood stove, and international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP View. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, or RAWSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RAWSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025 and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Webisode 57DHXYE October 5, 2025 youth-led U.S. climate activists widen focus to fight authoritarianism. In Webisode 57DHXYE 1 Oregon Portland, the Portland war zone is like Burning Man for the terminally online. There is more absurdity than menace on the streets of the city, at least for now. RAWSEP View. There is more menace than absurdity at Burning Man. Happily, may we not remember, and happily, may we forget Burning Man. Let us just forget about Burning Man, and at least not minimize the harm of air pollution from wood burning, including indoor residential wood burning and industrial wood burning by mistakenly treating Burning Man as just a harmless carnival. 2 Czech Republic Answer to question from Editor of RAWSEP to artificial intelligence. What changes will come to the Czech Republic because of the Andrej Babish win? 3 Czech Republic Prime Minister election October 4, 2025. Czech Republic billionaire populist. The Andrej Babish party wins parliamentary election. 4 Oklahoma Democrats. How 2 blonde suburban moms gave Democrats an answer to the right-wing media ecosystem. 5 Climate change and youth. RAWSEP View. Air pollution caused by indoor residential wood burning and air pollution caused by industrial wood burning contribute to climate change, while data on wood burning pollution is erased when measuring climate goal attainment by every country in the world. From the article headline, youth-led U.S. climate activists widen focus to fight authoritarianism. Environmental activism. Sunrise Movement, which led calls for a Green New Deal, will organize against the Trump attacks on universities. Main content. 1 Oregon Portland, the Portland war zone is like Burning Man for the terminally online. There is more absurdity than menace on the streets of the city, at least for now. RAWSEP View. There is more menace than absurdity at Burning Man. Happily, may we not remember, and happily, may we forget Burning Man. Let us just forget about Burning Man, and at least not minimize the harm of air pollution from wood burning, including indoor residential wood burning and industrial wood burning by mistakenly treating Burning Man as just a harmless carnival. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, The Atlantic, October 5, 2025. In the days since Trump directed his Secretary of War to marshal troops against domestic terrorists in Portland, Oregon, encouraging the use of full force in a city he likened to a war zone, I have been hanging around the demonstration that Trump wants to crush. What I have found is an atmosphere that is more like a carnival than combat. By some accounts, this all started back in June when a group of friends decided to pitch a tent outside an ICU facility in the city. 2 Czech Republic Answer to question from Editor of RAWSEP to artificial intelligence. What changes will come to the Czech Republic because of the Andrej Babish win? AI overview. With the populist ANO party victory in the October 2025 parliamentary elections, the Czech Republic is poised for major changes in its foreign policy toward Ukraine and its economic approach at home. While ANO leader Andrej Babish did not win a majority requiring him to seek coalition partners, the outcome represents a significant shift from the for Western center-right government. He is replacing key changes expected under a Babish-led government, include foreign policy. In Ukraine, reduced military support. Babish has pledged to significantly scale back or end military aid to Ukraine, criticizing the previous government's spending and echoing sentiments from fellow populists in Hungary and Slovakia. Reconsideration of ammunition initiative. The successful Czech-led initiative to supply Ukraine with artillery shells from outside the EU is likely to be terminated despite its proven effectiveness. Alignment with Eurosceptic neighbors. The new government could align the Czech Republic more closely with Hungary and Slovakia, potentially creating another dissenting voice within the EU on issues related to sanctions against Russia and support for Ukraine. Focus on diplomacy. Babish has advocated for a diplomatic resolution to the war in Ukraine with a campaign that played on voter weariness with the conflict and economic frustrations. Economic policy. Increased spending to address the cost of living crisis. Babish campaigned on promises of higher wages, increased pensions, and lower taxes for families and students. Looser fiscal policy. Economists warned that the ANO expensive spending pledges could reverse the previous government fiscal austerity and widen budget deficits. Challenges to EU climate policy. Babish has voiced strong opposition to the EU Green Deal and emissions reduction targets. The new government is expected to resist implementing policies that increase costs for Czech citizens. Reversal of pension reforms. The previous government plan to gradually raise the retirement age is expected to be reversed under Babish, who has pledged to cap it at 65. Potential hurdles for Babish. Challenges in forming a government. Since ANO did not secure an outright majority, Babish must form a coalition, most likely with the far-right Freedom and Direct Democracy (SPD) and the Motorist Party. These parties are more radically Eurosceptic and against NATO than Babish, and their demands could complicate negotiations. Presidential resistance. Czech President Petr Pavel, who is responsible for appointing the Prime Minister, has expressed reservations about appointing ministers who could undermine the Czech, EU, and NATO stance. Legal challenges and conflict of interest. Babish still faces ongoing fraud charges related to EU subsidies. He also must address potential conflicts of interest due to his ownership of a large business empire. Agrifert. Disclaimer: these changes are projections based on the Andrej Babish and the ANO party campaign platforms and public statements. The final policies of the new government will depend on the outcome of coalition negotiations. 3 Czech Republic Prime Minister election October 4, 2025. Czech Republic billionaire populist. The Andrej Babish party wins parliamentary election. Reuters, October 5, 2025. Billionaire businessman Andrej Babish has won parliamentary elections in the Czech Republic. Although his populist ANO party fell short of an overall majority, ANO received just under 35% of the vote, earning them 80 seats in the 200-seat lower house, up from 72 seats 4 years ago, according to preliminary results. Babish, who served as prime minister from 2017 to 2021, is expected to be invited to lead talks on forming a new coalition. While this election has thrown up no great surprises, few had any doubt he would emerge in first place. There are still plenty of questions. Babish has already begun talks with the 2 small right-wing Eurosceptic parties that managed to pass the 5% threshold, the Against Green Deal Motorists for themselves and the Against Immigrant Freedom and Direct Democracy (SPD) party. After giving his acceptance speech, he said he wanted ANO to govern alone rather than create a formal coalition. ANO will have the most in common with the Motorists. The two already sit in the same European Parliament group, the Pro-Sovereignty Patriots for Europe, which Babish founded alongside Viktor Orban of Hungary and Herbert Kickl of Austria in 2024. ANO shares shares the misgivings of the motorists about the EU emissions targets and vows to modify or reject them outright. Both parties are firmly against Czech households carrying a greater financial burden for cleaner energy, and both oppose the EU ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars. After 2035, relations with the SPD could be more fraught for a start. SPD fought this election in a formal alliance with a number of fringe parties on the far right, meaning they will have to yield some of their seats to them. Okamura may not have full control of the MPs in his caucus. Always a recipe for disaster in coalition politics, Babish has also categorically ruled out allowing a referendum on either EU or NATO membership, a key policy priority for the SPD. Czech military support for the Ukraine war effort, however, is likely to change significantly under a Babish administration. He has already vowed to scrap the successful Czech ammunition initiative, which has delivered 35 million shells to Ukraine since 2022. Babish claims it lacks transparency, but Czech government officials who created the scheme say it works precisely because it is not transparent under the initiative Czech arms dealers use their international contacts to procure shells for Ukraine on the global market. With the bulk of the money coming from EU and NATO partners, some of the producers are in countries that have relationships with Russia, but as the deal is arranged with Czech dealers, their involvement remains private. The ANO leader wants it moved under the umbrella of NATO instead, and again on Saturday accused Czech arms dealers of making enormous profits from the scheme. However, he said he would have no problem negotiating the matter with President Zelensky. Answering a reporter, Babish said, "I spoke with Trump 5 times in 2020. I was in the Pentagon, I was in the FBI, I talked to the head of the CIA." Babish said, speaking of his first term, which overlapped with the Trump first term in office, "We were a very reliable partner." He went on, "I have been prime minister, we have been in government before, and we had excellent results. Billionaire populist eyes power in Czech vote, but may need help from extremes." 4 Oklahoma Democrats, how 2 blonde suburban moms gave Democrats an answer to the right-wing media ecosystem. U.S. politics. The Guardian. "I have had enough." The Jennifer Welch and Angie Sullivan podcast has risen up the charts and created a community with a brand of politics excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian. October 5th, 2025. When Trump scheduled a press conference after a weekend in which rumors about his health swirled, 2 women in red state Oklahoma launched a live stream for their more than 1 million followers on YouTube to speculate about the condition of Kankel's Mac Taco breast, shortened to Kanks for expediency. In spite, it was fitting for the straight-talking liberal podcast. "I just found hope to be dangerous. In these times, they want to keep expanding the podcast." Welch has become a frequent guest on TV news and commentary shows. The more she appears on these shows, the more requests she gets for others. But she added, "We are at an interesting intersection where our YouTube gets as many views as nighttime television does. Still, the time is right for a big move." Welch is heading to New York City, renting an apartment starting in October, and planning to spend most of her time there now that her kids have graduated from high school. Sullivan plans to do the same, looking for an apartment to rent there later this year. The podcast will continue. Welch has always felt like an outsider in Oklahoma as a progressive and an atheist. She has found community. They're building a group of friends who believe the same things, but still is bothered by the hypocrisy she sees among mutual friends who vote against their gay or lesbian friends. She is giving the New York experiment a year to decide whether it is a good fit with no expectations. It has been a lifelong dream of hers, and she is able to realize it now. "I have always been stuck here, and I have always felt like an outsider. I have always been harassed and ridiculed for my belief system, and it is going to be nice to be around people where it is not a big deal that I am an atheist." 5 Climate change and youth. RAWSEP View. Air pollution caused by indoor residential wood burning and air pollution caused by industrial wood burning contribute to climate change, while data on wood burning pollution is erased when measuring climate goal attainment by every country in the world. From the article headline, Youth-led U.S. climate activists widen focus to fight authoritarianism. Environmental activism. Sunrise movement, which led calls for a Green New Deal, will organize against the Trump attacks on universities. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian. October 5th, 2025. As the Trump administration cracks down on both environmental policies and progressive activism, the Sunrise Movement, the youth-led climate justice organization that popularized calls for a Green New Deal, is widening its mission to fight authoritarianism. Every day Trump is seizing power and shredding the Constitution, the Sunrise executive director wrote in an open letter to Sunrise members, funders, and allies. What ordinary people do in the coming months will determine whether he and his billionaire cronies can cement their grip on power and turn this country into a playground for the rich and powerful. Unlike the majority of the Sunrise past work, its newer efforts will not necessarily center the climate crisis. A founder and spokesperson for Sunrise said the projects will aim to build a world where climate action is possible. "In order to win the bold action that we will need to prevent climate catastrophe, we are going to need a country where we have the right to dissent and protest." She said, "How are we going to win on climate under authoritarianism? One key focus will be campus organizing to urge schools to resist the Trump attempts to control their curricula and rules around political dissent." The expansion comes amid an assault from the White House on both green protections and progressive organizing. Since January, Trump has rolled back hundreds of environmental rules, demolished Biden-era incentives for carbon-free technologies. In recent weeks, he also designated the decentralized anti-fascist movement Antifa a terrorist organization and issued a memorandum aimed at reining in what he calls the radical left-wing domestic terror network. Last week, Trump said George Soros, the billionaire philanthropist who funds the Open Society Foundation's OSF, is a likely candidate for prosecution for unspecified charges. Sunrise obtained $2.1 million from the foundations between 2019 and 2023. The OSF website shows, "We will raise our voices against this authoritarian abuse of power." Trump this week also posted Trump 2028 hats on social media, indicating interest in a potential unconstitutional third term. "We are just seeing outright disrespect for our constitutional rights, and we cannot accept that." Headlines. The New York Times. October 5th, 2025. Consumers' dental health, how to keep your gums healthy. The New York Times. Consumers' food recipes. Pumpkin is not a spice. The New York Times. Consumers' food, wedding food at some wedding centerpieces are ripe for the picking. The New York Times. Consumers' how Halloween, the 25 best Halloween decorations we have found of 2025 reviews by Wirecutter consumers. Housing are 9. Bathrooms too many. The New York Times consumers housing ask Wirecutter privacy solutions for my ground floor windows reviews by Wirecutter consumers. Housing garage renovations are making room for parties, art studios, and game day lounges. The New York Times consumers gifts need a get well soon gift start here reviews by Wirecutter consumers. Housing marked stars and classic cars surprising retirement communities. The New York Times consumers healthcare. More retirees are living on less and losing a means of help to pay for Medicare. The New York Times consumers reading Orwell 2 + 2 = 5 review how George came to see the world as Orwellian. The New York Times consumer sales Amazon the 70+ best early prime big deal days deals of 2025 reviews by Wirecutter consumers. Work at home places the 7 best writing desks that do not look like office furniture reviews by Wirecutter. Farming not cowbells cows wear high-tech collars now. The New York Times history 1930s FDR era overlooked no more. Bessie Margolin lawyer who turned the workers' hopes into law. The New York Times human interest as I contemplated what to do next I heard a voice behind me. The New York Times human interest quiet I am working. Here the New York Times Medicine and Science 8 exercises to improve your grip strength. The New York Times Medicine and Science autism, ADHD, anxiety. Can a diagnosis make you better? The New York Times Medicine and Science cancer young people. The race to figure out why more young people are getting cancer. The New York Times Medicine and Science. It is just a virus. The ER told him days later he was dead. The New York Times Michigan Grand Rapids quality of life and affordable too. The New York Times music in the Taylor Swift version Ophelia has a fairy tale ending. The New York Times music RAWSEP View Taylor Swift. Feet of clay, a negative among the positives from the article headline. Why fans think Taylor Swift wrote actually romantic about Charlie XCX. The New York Times New York City deaths. 2 girls found dead atop a J train in suspected subway surfing accident. The New York Times Republicans opinion civility and disagreement in American politics. The New York Times Republicans opinion GOP to Gen Z pay double for health insurance or go without the New York Times TV. The Gold Review British crime the old-fashioned way. The New York Times TV Michael Freitz, new Reading Rainbow host, tries to recapture the magic of the show. The New York Times Trump actions opinion. Who is Trump responsible to? The New York Times Trump appearance. Trump the sports fan. The New York Times Trump crypto opinion. This crazy crypto heist is the story of our time. The New York Times Trump economy RAWSEP. View your tax dollars squandered from the article headline. Treasury plans to mint $1 commemorative Trump coin. The New York Times Trump military federal agent in Chicago shot motorist in confrontation. Officials say. The New York Times Trump lack of gun control. How 106 people got together to stop a school shooting before it happened. The New York Times Trump military judge blocks the Trump deployment of National Guard in Portland. Or the New York Times Trump military Kristi Noem says ICE will be all over the Super Bowl. The New York Times Trump military medicine and science push for military coverage of IVF faces challenge in Congress. The New York Times Nicaragua a chilling new tactic in Nicaragua arrest then silence. The New York Times Northern Ireland politics opinion. Northern Ireland Gaza and the road to peace. The New York Times Europe opinion. The West is defined by loss. The New York Times Ukraine Russia targets the Ukraine energy infrastructure with deadly bombardment. The New York Times Ukraine Russian drones hit 2 passenger trains. Ukraine says. The New York Times Ukraine and Czech Republic secretive program that keeps the Ukraine weapons firing is suddenly in doubt. The New York Times Czech Republic Ivan Klima, Czech novelist who chafed under totalitarian regimes, dies at 90. For the New York Times Russia, the Pacific Gateway shows the Kremlin grip on the vast expanse of Russia. The New York Times Middle East oil production OPEC plus agrees to small boost in oil production. The New York Times Nepal climate change landslides kill dozens in Nepal during political transition. The New York Times headlines. The Guardian October 5th 2025 artificial intelligence AI actor. The Guardian view on Tilly Norwood. She is not art, she is data. Editorial. The Guardian climate change and youth. RAWSEP View air pollution caused by indoor residential wood burning and air pollution caused by industrial wood burning contribute to climate change, while data on wood burning pollution is erased when measuring climate goal attainment by every country in the world. From the article headline. Youth-led U.S. climate activists widen focus to fight authoritarianism. Environmental activism. The Guardian consumers reading Tim Dowling. I love books but cannot remember anything about the ones I have just read. Family. The Guardian consumer sales Amazon. How did Amazon get so rubbish? Amazon. The Guardian consumers weight loss drugs. Costco to sell weight loss drugs such as Ozempic and Wegovy at half price. U.S. News. The Guardian Democrats blue states should come together to declare an emergency. Here is how Thomas Gogan. The Guardian Democrats Mike Johnson has not sworn in. This new Democrat is it because she wants to release the Epstein files. U.S. politics. The Guardian Greta Thunberg RAWSEP View climate change activist who has recently spoken out against indoor residential wood burning. From the article headline. Israel accused of detaining Greta Thunberg in infested cell and making her hold flags. Gaza flotilla. The Guardian human interest. The peacock parent problem. How to survive being raised by narcissist parents and parenting. The Guardian human interest. Why do I use LOL so much in my texts? Well, actually, The Guardian music. Taylor Swift the official release party of a showgirl review. Lazy big screen cash and Taylor Swift. The Guardian music. The Taylor Swift Charlie XCX hit job misses the point and underscores her tedious obsession with conflict. Taylor Swift. The Guardian Trump versus Democrats. Trump sets sights on liberal megadonor George Soros. A chilling message to other donors. Trump administration. The Guardian Trump image. Republicans. The Trump decomposing year of porn. What does hair certainty tell us about our leader's beauty? The Guardian Trump versus Latin America. Trump bullying of Latin America is not part of any plan. He does not have a clue what he is doing. Simon Tisdall. The Guardian Trump controlled Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is trying to warn us about something. Are we listening? U.S. Supreme Court The Guardian Trump military Pete Hegseth fires U.S. Navy Chief of Staff. U.S. military The Guardian. Trump military versus Chicago. Trump authorizes National Guard deployment to Chicago. White House says as Border Patrol there shoots woman. Chicago. The Guardian. Trump military Virginia. U.S. military under fire in Virginia. But were Trump and Hegseth shooting blanks? U.S. military. The Guardian. Trump military. White House official inadvertently reveals plans to send elite army unit to Portland. U.S. military. The Guardian. Trump military. Why? The Trump speech to U.S. military top brass was such a disaster. Sidney Blumenthal. The Guardian. Women was prehistory of feminist paradise. Archaeology. The Guardian. United Kingdom Film Club. The Amy Lou Wood fantastical rom-com is part Mike Lee part cozy family sitcom. Television and radio. The Guardian. Spain travel autumn in Madrid. Why the Spanish capital is city break. Gold Madrid holidays. The Guardian. Czech Republic Prime Minister election October 4th, 2025. Populist billionaire Andrej Babish wins Czech parliamentary election. Czech Republic. The Guardian. Ukraine 4 killed as Russian drones and missiles bombard Ukrainian city of Lviv. Ukraine. The Guardian. Ukraine war briefing China providing Russia with intelligence on missile targets. Ukrainian official claims Ukraine. The Guardian. Belarus people are dying. Belarusians warn the Lukashenko crackdown is far from over. Belarus. The Guardian. Russian drones a collective anxiety attack. The psychology of unexplained drone sightings across Europe. Drones military. The Guardian. Russian neighbor. The Georgia Prime Minister announces crackdown on dissent after Tbilisi protests. Georgia. The Guardian. Lebanon pop star turned Islamist militant Fidel Shaker surrenders to Lebanese military after 12 years on the run. Lebanon. The Guardian headlines other media October 5th, 2025. Argentina under siege. The president of Argentina drops his chainsaw. The week. Czech Republic Prime Minister election October 4th, 2025. Czech Republic billionaire populist. The Andrej Babish party wins parliamentary election. Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's Corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. RAWSEP View. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning, replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom. The Eco-Design Wood Stove International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP View Purple Air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.